Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Decisions. We have been neglecting our Dynasty Decisions family here, but today we are breaking down 6 teams of your guys' Dynasty teams, going through your trades, your decisions that you have to make. What are you rebuilding, contending? Of course, this time of year, people are making their playoff push, so it is a great time to talk about Dynasty fantasy football teams. If you guys do play Dynasty, you need to be subscribed over on Flock Fantasy. You can skip the line in these episodes. You can get a team review. All of that is linked down below in the description. So, Danny, without further ado, let's rip into the first team.
Yeah, like Corey mentioned at the top, all of the teams on this video, so we're doing 6 teams on this video. All these teams are actually over on Flock Fantasy Mother Flockers. So if you do want to skip the line, like Corey said, that is the best way to be able to do so.
Yeah, and of course, use promo code FSE for 7 days for free. And also, you do have to use promo code FSE to skip the line. So, first team we're talking about here is from AStrout, longtime listener here. You can see he's got a 12-team PPR Superflex league with CJ Stroud, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young as his quarterbacks, Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson as his main running backs, Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison, Brian Thomas Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, Rashee Rice, Ladd McConkey, T. Higgins, very, very strong at the wide receiver position. And then tight end wise, he has Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft, and a couple other dudes there. It does look like he's missing his 2025 second, but he does have the majority of his other picks there. So he gives us a lot of background information. He said top 6 make the playoffs. He's currently in 7th place right now. With 2 weeks left to go, he will be tied with 6th, 1 game behind 5th and 2 games behind 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So I guess it's a pretty tight league at the top. And he does say he has a first place has a bunch of points for, 2nd to 7th is a little bit closer. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the team and kind of exactly what his main question is? Do I make a push here to get more points? Like, do I make a trade and go after presumably a running back because that's the weakest position on his team?
Yeah, so the way I'm looking at it, again, I need context for how the top 2 teams look in comparison, because obviously they will have the bye week. And even if you're giving yourself 60 to 70% chance that you would lose that matchup, then at that point, it's like, would you rather house money the situation, know that you're built around at wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end, use that first round pick to add a running back? That's the question you have to ask. Now, obviously, this is a start 10 team. This is a 12-team league. So having the ample depth at wide receiver you do, having, a strong tight end core overall, I think Pitts and Tucker Kraft can very much suffice. You've got a guy like, for example, Zach Ertz. If you need to throw in a pinch for the rest of the year, I think he could be a solid top 15 level tight end option. And then at quarterback, I mean, it's really looking bright moving forward. I don't know who you started last night, but if you started Caleb Williams, he would have had a really good game. By the way, we're recording this actually the day after American Thanksgiving. So we would have saw Caleb Williams completely shred the Lions defense in the second half of that game. And we saw how that ended up ending. But overall, again, I don't know who you started at quarterback this week, but if you started Caleb Williams, you would have got off to about a 30-point head start. Bo Nix obviously been carving up. He's a top 6 to 8 quarterback on a week-to-week basis at this point. And then CJ Stroud, he hasn't really played up to the standard that we know, but also he's got Nico Collins back and he's playing the Jaguars this week. So really, I'm looking at this. I think you can go either direction. It really, to me, just really stems back to how strong the top 2 teams are.
Yeah, I think when you're in this situation, I think a lot of people in our audience will be in situations like this because we talk about building your teams this way all the time, which is get your quarterbacks, get your wide receivers, particularly the way that the draft class is stacked up. We knew this was going to be a very good running back class coming in. So it would have been smart of you to get all your wide receivers in 2024, get your quarterbacks, which it looks like you grabbed 2 in last year's class with Bo Nix and Caleb Williams. So this is a position where you find yourself in a house money situation coming into the year. Your team was performing at least to the point that if you added a hammer at running back, you probably could compete. He did make a trade for Ramondre Stevenson. That's how he got Ramondre on his roster. He ended up sending away Ray Davis and his 2025 second in exchange for Ramondre Stevenson. I think at face value, it's probably a good deal. The thing that I would probably say is what I would maybe do going forward is if you are able to get a hammer at running back, and a hammer as in the top 4 running backs in Dynasty, like Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Devon Achane, somebody like that. Those guys make sense for your roster because if you add them, you're going to be in a position, A, that you can make a playoff push for the rest of the season, and B, that they're young enough that you're going to be very good next year and probably going forward as well. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. And sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes the best teams in the league have those teams and you're not able to trade for them, in which case you're probably better off drafting your running back production in the 2025 class. But that is the question, in my opinion, that you have to ask yourself right now, because in my estimation, sending away your 2025 first for Joe Mixon or
I wouldn't
Josh
send the
Jacobs or
first.
Derrick Henry, that doesn't really help you in the long term, because the reason you went house money in the first place was that, you know, you could take it or leave it if you won this year. You were planning on injecting some youth at your running back position going forward, and that's precisely what's happening, even though you've gotten a pretty good run out as far as the production you're getting from the rest of your team.
Yeah, and he does add context here. I'll be tied with sixth if I win this game, I believe is what he mentioned. Sorry, he's in seventh. He's tied with sixth currently. 1 game behind fifth, 2 games behind second, third, and fourth, and pretty similar points for. And then first place is this just the juggernaut, 300 more points for than everybody else. Second to seventh is not even close. That just reminds me of the FSC Listener League, where my team is just 11-1 right now, carving. But he basically says he does have
he's
a
playing
favorable
tankers the next 2 weeks, he said. So he's probably going to make playoffs, is what he's basically alluding to here.
Instead of moving the 25-1, would you move one of your wide receivers to try to see if you can get a hammer?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was precisely my first thought, because you're in a position in a start 10 league. You have 3 wide receivers, 2 flexes. You can start Chase Harrison, Brian Thomas, JSN, Lad McConkey, T. Higgins. Like, you can start 5 of these guys every single week. So what I would probably be aiming to do is seeing what the open market value is for a guy like Rashee Rice, for example, who you can't use right now, or seeing even the open market of a guy like Rashee Rice plus Darnell Mooney.
Crazy.
Yeah, like those guys are productive right now. If you can pivot into running back production, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Can you get Bijan in a small piece for Marvin Harrison Jr. right now?
You could definitely explore that. I don't think I would be willing to sell Marvin at a cost that I would consider to be low right now. I would probably pick
they're both going to be
that's
second round
picks.
More
on the up.
I think they're both going to be second round picks. Like, Bijan's probably going to be a late second, Marvin going to be an early second. If you can bridge the gap with, like, you get a 2 back in return because you lost your own 2. Like, I don't think that's bad.
Yeah, I can't imagine most casual leagues are excited about Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point in time. That's kind of what my thought process would lead me to believe. Like, I would rather sell, like, I bet you in most casual leagues, people would be a lot more willing to buy into Brian Thomas or Jackson Smith-Njigba, or somebody who's like performing at a high level at the moment.
JSM would be
that's probably the thought process that I would employ, because that's how most casual leagues, you know, behave.
Yeah, I mean, JSN's on a big, again, gauge your market. You'll know if you're in a sharper league, if you're in a league where people like the immediate value rather than the long-term implied value, and you can kind of pick and choose your spots here. I think this is a team that is worthwhile to at least fend a piece into draft capital. I wouldn't do that, but Mooney, Rashee Rice, JSN, like I said, if you're able to get one of the top 4 running backs and a little piece for Marvin Harrison Jr., I'd be willing to. Like, those would be the directions I would go. Now, it is no secret you do need at least one more running back, considering that Najee does have a tough rest of season schedule, Ramondre a little unreliable. If you can get a hammer piece just to anchor you for the rest of the season, you're not going to beat the favorite because he's in first place. Or sorry, you're not going to be favored against the favorite because he's in first place with the points for. But who knows, man? You make the semifinal, you face this guy. This is a team that I'd be willing to invest into, just not that first.
Yeah, no, exactly. To me, it's a go big or go home. If you can get a hammer, that's definitely fair, because that's gonna, you know, help your team in the long term. But yeah, seeing if you can move off of a T. Higgins or Rashee Rice, somebody like that, maybe you want to sell high, quote unquote, on one of the guys that are on the up right now, like a Jackson Smith-Njigba. If maybe we look back a couple months from now, we're like, damn, we should have been selling JSN after those couple of games. That definitely makes some sense to me. But this is the type of team that you don't have to do that. Like, I just want to really stress that point home, is that once you spend that first next year, those 2/3 or whatever, maybe in the offseason you sell off one of these wide receivers, T. Higgins signs a big contract, whatever the case is, you're going to be well set up to be a hammer next year. You're going to be right there with this guy next year, atop the rankings, atop the standings, with all the points for. So don't go crazy here. Don't just sell your first round pick for Derrick Henry because you want to try and win this year.
Think of it like this. If you sell your first round pick prematurely for an aging running back this year, and that first round pick ends up being, again, you have a good team, you're in 6th, 7th right now. Let's just say hypothetically you're picking, you make the playoffs, you're the 107, 108, you lose in the wild card because you don't end up making another move. Well, that first round pick will end up equating to a running back that we will have ranked higher than Derrick Henry after the season. Like, we're looking at John Judkins, Marion Hampton, Caleb Johnson. One of those guys are going to be able to fall to the mid to late first round this year because that's how loaded of a running back class it is. We didn't even mention Ashton Genty because he's going to be gone at 101, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. Again, you have to, as I talked about in the Dynasty Trade Targets video I did last week, if you're buying production, you have to ask yourself, am I going to hate this trade 3 months from now? Like that's
Exactly.
basically, if you're like, you know what, I'm going to look back at this trade and say, I had to, pay a little bit for the production, but it's not too bad. It's stomachable. Then that's fine. That's a fine move you can make. But if you're looking back on the trade going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. That's when you shouldn't make a competitive push, especially when you are technically on the fringe playoff team kind of caliber as far as where your production lies right now.
Hell, I mean, we made a trade entering fantasy championship week last year. I ended up winning the championship and still regretting the trade.
Yeah, because Danny traded me notoriously. He traded me Travis Etienne and the 107, which I eventually traded up to get Drake May with. And you got Christian McCaffrey, Devontae Adams there. So even though you won the championship, it's funny because Etienne actually outscored Christian McCaffrey in week 17.
The championship.
So it wouldn't have actually mattered had you made that trade. I ended up getting the guy who was the young, appreciable asset who was Drake May in that deal. So yeah, it's always a little bit sketchy when you're trading for production. So just keep that in mind, especially when you're in this position. You have absolutely no rush to compete. You're going to be very good for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to kill you to not win the championship this year, especially if the top teams in your league have some aging production that's going to maybe phase them out of contention for the next couple of years. So let's move on to the next team here, which is from Michael T. A 10-team half PPR league. It is a one quarterback league by the looks of it here. So it's a start 8, very shallow league format. He does have Trevor Lawrence, Drake May as his main quarterbacks here. A little bit light at the running back position, a little cheaper there with Tyrone Tracy, Chuba Hubbard, Ray Davis, so on and so forth. A lot of handcuffs there. Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave, Keon Coleman, Darnell Mooney, and others. Tight ends, Pat Fryermuth, Tucker Kraft, and Will Dissly. And then it looks like he is on pace for the 103 in the 2025 class right now. And he has all of his future picks except for his 2025 second, but he does have a couple mid-round picks later on there. So he said he's been on Dynasty Decisions a couple of times. He's still in a heavy rebuild, trying to sell off guys like, Chuba Hubbard, Darnell Mooney for picks, but his league mates not really willing to give him a whole lot of value for those guys. He ended up shipping off his second this year during last year's rookie draft to move up and get Drake May, because in a one quarterback league, having only Trevor Lawrence didn't really sit right with him. And he said, been trying to get the pick back with Mooney, but no success. Not really sure what to do in a league where not many trades go down and where players are undervalued other than kind of studs. And to be honest, man, that's exactly how this league should operate.
It should be. It's a 10-team start 8, bro. No disrespect to other players. Studs are all that matter.
Yeah, exactly. Like in leagues that me and Danny play in, Darnell Mooney has a lot more value than this league. Let's just be perfectly honest here. If somebody's giving you a second round pick for Darnell Mooney, you should feel extremely lucky, because it's not that Mooney is not worth that pick from a production standpoint. It's that in a 10-team league, a second round pick is inherently better. In a 10-team start 8 one quarterback league, they're only things that matter. Like the only pieces that you probably ever get trade offers about are Jamar Chase and Marvin Harrison Jr. and like those type of guys. Like nobody else really matters, because if you're able to just kind of hit on your draft picks during the startup, maybe hit on some late round rookie picks, you're going to pick up tons of Darnell Mooneys and Chuba Hubbards throughout the rookie cycles.
Yeah, 100%. And we're looking at this. This is a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex league. So I believe it's a full PPR. Let me see. It's half PPR. Okay, correction. I see that in the top left. So either way, though, I mean, like you're obviously really set at wide receiver. Maybe you add one more piece in the rookie draft, or maybe you add one more piece eventually. But realistically, that top 4 should be able to suffice. And then you're looking at the running back position. Tyrone Tracy is looking really strong right now. Chuba Hubbard, obviously breakout season. Like there's a lot more pieces than I think, like you said, you're willing to expect at this point, like especially knowing it's a 103. The fact that you have a well-built roster around a team that's about to add the 103 is very encouraging. Now, like I said, of course, though, the hammers are what matters. Like if you can get a hammer at the 103, that's what you're going to have to do. But outside of that, I mean, Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison Jr. are like the 2 pillars of the squad.
Yeah, the really, really difficult part of building teams in shallow leagues, and especially when we look at this team, if this was a team that you and I were in the league, we would be like, oh, this is, definitely not that bad of a team because you got a lot of decent depth or whatever. But the problem is you don't have a hammer at quarterback, at least as of now. Maybe Drake May or Trevor Lawrence, are eventually hammers for you at quarterback. At tight end, you don't have a hammer. Again, maybe Tucker Kraft, somebody like that develops into that for you. You have no hammer running backs. Again, I would say it's probably unlikely that any of them become hammer running backs. And then at wide receiver, you have 2 hammers, but you like ideally in a 10-team start 8 league to be a monster, a team that's going to win the championship, you probably want to have Chase, Harrison, plus 3 other top 24 dynasty wide receivers behind them. So for me, I look at this team, and you said it's difficult to trade. You know, it's not like you have 4 first-round picks coming up this year. It might be challenging for you to like infuse a ton of superstar talent into this roster without maybe trading for future capital. So again, you are obviously active trying to sell off Chuba Hubbard types, Darnell Mooney types, or whatever. What I would be looking to potentially do is, if you can, collect draft picks in any way possible. That's probably your best course of action. And if that includes, let's say, selling Marvin Harrison for Ladd McConkey in a mid projected first, you might have to like consider moves. Like, I'm not saying you absolutely have to make moves like that, but you might have to consider moves.
Where I'll counter a little bit though, because it is a 10-team start 8. But I mean, like, that's more pro Ladd McConkey than it is anti Marvin Harrison, to be honest. Like, I don't.
No, it is. Again, all I'm saying is the place you're going to get studs is in the draft. Most likely, because if people are not trading, that's the only way you're going to really get studs. So if that's where you're at with it, you need to collect as many draft picks as possible. And I don't think this is news to you, Mike. Like, I think you probably know this already, but it might involve you understanding that like picks are the things that are going to drive a monster in a league format like this, where not a lot of people.
You have to take swings. Is basically what
you have to take swings, and that means collecting as many seconds as humanly possible, collecting as many firsts as humanly possible. So if somebody's willing to give you right now Chris Olave, they're going to give you, you know, a late projected 1 in a 2026 2. Like, you might have to make deals like that just to make sure that you're able to infuse this roster with hammers, because as of now you have 2. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. You need to take swings on a roster like this, because in a 10-team start 8, 1 quarterback league, not many players actually matter. Like, realistically, in this type of format, how many players matter? 30 in all of fantasy?
Yeah, exactly. The only way you're going to get to a place where you're in a position where you're just dominating your league is when you have 5 or 6 of those guys. And then you also have good depth around them. And if nobody's trading, which is what the piece of context that you gave us in this league, it's going to be difficult to just like wheel and deal a Darnell Mooney after a couple of good weeks, like the way that you and I operate in a lot of our dynasty leagues. It's like, oh, Chuba Hubbard's RB1 through 8 weeks of the season. He's on the trade block for me in a lot of leagues that I have him. And I'm, you know, actively sending out offers to competitive teams. But even in those league formats, sometimes you have challenging times selling off a Chuba Hubbard or selling off a Darnell Mooney or whatever. So if people are just like staunch, I'm just not trading or whatever, like, it's going to be difficult to build out a really strong roster, because trading, in my opinion, is actually the way you get a strong roster.
The biggest fundamental.
It's huge. It's a huge piece of strategy.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's probably our best strengths. I mean, look at our dynasty portfolios. Incremental gains in each trade. Like, if I look across like all of my teams, the teams that I'm competing in, I'm like, okay, how did I get them to this point? And I'll look back at some of the deals I made to like ultimately get there. And you can see the process too. If you go, okay, I have Jamar Chase on my team. How did I get Jamar Chase? Okay, I traded X assets. Okay, how did I get those assets? When you track back the history of these assets, you can see it's not just I got Jamar Chase in one move. It's like, okay, there was 4 or 5 trades leading up to that got me up to Jamar Chase's value. And I'm just using Jamar Chase as an example, whether that's, you know, Bijan Robinson, or whether that's, you know, a top end quarterback. Like, you're not just going to get those guys right away. Like, you have to work up to them with little incremental value gains.
Yeah, and it's usually like, if you can hit across the board, you know, 70% of your trades or whatever, incrementally across your portfolio, you're probably going to make the gains that you're kind of looking for. So, yeah, I think that's probably your best course of action, is trying to make trades. Like you said, if it's very difficult, then you're probably going to need to just collect assets in any way possible. And again, really, really pay attention to when players are at a value spike. For example, Tyrone Tracy right now, in my opinion, is at a value spike because he's producing. He was a 5th round rookie, and
looks
you know,
good.
there's the risk that they add pieces in the draft. So what I would be doing with players like that, and Chuba Hubbard also fits the bill, and like you said, you kind of already trying to sell him. You definitely need to be shopping those guys on the market and see. You got to really scout out the teams that would be looking for them too. It's not enough to just throw these guys on the trade block and say nobody's sending me offers. It's like, go look at the teams.
You got to be active.
Competitive teams. You got to be active in their DMs. Are you interested in Chuba Hubbard? I see that you have X amount of running backs. You like, maybe you could use a guy like Chuba Hubbard. If they say no, I'm not interested, then obviously that's fine. But if they're like, hey, you're much more likely to get a good trade offer from someone when you engage them and take an interest in what their team needs.
Yeah, the way I best describe it, and I think you put it perfectly as well. Anybody that's in a league with us, I can guarantee you, ask any subscriber, any other creator, like I have active DMs. Like I am constantly interacting with you guys. Even if I don't have a trade going on, if there's like something that goes on in the league or somebody goes off, like you guys know, like I'm in the DMs all the time. So when it comes to trading, building those relationships and being able to go to someone like, hey, I noticed your lineup, you're needing this. Like they're more willing to hear you out if you've already established that bond.
Yeah, especially if you're like, I mean, I'm sure there's people in our audience that'll say, like, I've sent them a shit trade offer before. Like, I guarantee that's happened. I guarantee that's happened with you as
100%.
well. It's the vast majority of your offers, hopefully, that
Yeah.
improve their team or give them something that they need. That is how you get trades done. So if you sometimes when people say nobody in my league trades, it might just be that you're giving them shit trade offers. Like, honestly, like it could that could be the reason why. Or you're just like, I put a guy on a trade block and nobody in the league trades. It's like, well, you got to be active and, proactive as far as like seeking out the teams that might be looking for that asset.
The only league I can confirm that I can't get trades done are leagues of my home leagues because they are just not willing to deal with me unless I overpay. Although I made one deal at the deadline for Christian McCaffrey. That is the one deal I've made this year. Back in my prime, I was making 6 to 8 a year.
Yeah, no, in my home league, about half the league mates are just, they refuse to trade with me. Some of them are, not complete pussies and will actually trade with me, and they're not scared to like lose a trade because it's not like we can't.
I have to overpay to get a deal done.
People pretend that we will never lose a trade. It's like I've lost like multiple trades this year.
I have to overpay to get deals done right now. Like I told you, the deal I made, like I needed a running back before the deadline. My only two were Gibbs and Dowdle. So I overpaid a little bit for McCaffrey. I paid Puka plus Worthy to get McCaffrey because at wide receiver, I had Kupp, Neighbors, and Mike Evans already. I'm like, yo, if Dowdle doesn't work out, I need a running back too in the playoffs. And that's why I'm McCaffrey, right?
Absolutely. So we're kind of yapping at this point. Let's get into Brian's team here. Brian's got a 12-team PPR, best ball, 6 point per passing touchdown, super flex league, 1.5 tight end premium. Anthony Richardson, Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson as the quarterbacks, Kamara, and then Chuba Hubbard and some other guys there at running back, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, Michael Pittman, Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, and others at wide receiver. And then tight end, Travis Kelce as the main guy here. Does have the 108 projected this season, so it looks like what he would be in, 4th place or something like that. And then 2026, 27, he has most of his picks, or he's currently in 5th place. He says, simple question here. He says, do I push the chips in with picks and maybe Rashee Rice because he's injured right now to make a title push? Or do I just kind of let the chips fall as they may, even though he's currently a playoff team? Should I sell old assets now? And this is a very, very difficult spot to be in, Brian, where Brian is right now, because it is very, very easy to talk yourself into selling all the picks, get all the players, try and win the championship. My question to you, Brian, is what do teams 1 to 4 look like? Because you said you're in 5th place right now. Okay. If teams 1 to 4 are horses, then you should be trying to see what you can get for Travis Kelce and Matthew Stafford and Alvin Kamara and some of the older guys here. Because in my opinion, this team does not look like a horse. This team looks solid. It maybe could sneak out a championship.
It's the quarterback
core.
Lucky. It's the quarterback core for me. I think quarterback core, and if anything were to happen to Kamara, I think your running backs would be like falling off of a cliff. I think you got solid wide receivers, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, Jaden Reed are like guys you can rely upon. Maybe Michael Pittman somehow looks healthier, and this past week is something that we can count on, although I tend to think it was more of a flash in the pan kind of week based off what we've seen this year. That makes me concerned. And, I mean, you do have horses at tight end. I mean, you have Travis Kelce as your tight end 1, locked and loaded. If Kelce were to miss a week, guess what? You got Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, and Will fucking Disley behind him. Like, honestly, at this point,
it is best ball, so that helps you a little bit.
Oh, right, yeah.
It is best ball, so that definitely helps him, but I think he's wide receiver, running back, and quarterback hammers away from actually being like a true contender. But at the same time, if everybody's team is kind of like this, then there's definitely a chance that, a move can push you over the top and you can go get a better quarterback upgrade or whatever. Like what I would maybe consider doing is seeing if you can use one of your current quarterbacks to upgrade to a better quarterback. Like if Matthew Stafford plus the 108 got you to a better, more secure long-term quarterback asset that also is going to give you good production, maybe better production than Stafford gives you, that would improve your chances of winning this thing a lot, in my opinion.
What would that
so
trade
that's
look
kind
like,
of where I'm at with it. It's going to come down to league evaluation. Can you look yourself in the mirror and say that you deserve to be in 5th place? Like maybe you have the 2nd most points for or something like that. Then sure, maybe make a move here. But if you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, I'm getting lucky right now, and the second the season's over, I'm going to want to sell these guys anyway because I'm definitely not winning the championship, then be proactive and sell them while they're productive.
I think that's a really good point that I initially didn't contextualize. This is a best ball league. I was talking about having, depth issues across the board. In a
Tight
best
end
ball, that's
wise, I
not
don't
where you
think
want
he
to
has
be.
any depth issues.
At tight end, he's fine. I'm more so talking about running back and wide receiver. I think in a best ball league, you're relying upon four, maybe. I mean, maybe if you're lucky, like Nick Westbrook-Akine keeps doing what he's doing, but like you got four, maybe even three pieces if Michael Pittman proves unreliable that you can rely upon on a week-to-week basis. Where Tyreek Hill, Amon St. Brown, Jaden Reed have a down game, like Amon just had a 12-point game, maybe that ends up costing you because, I mean, we're looking at a 3 wide receiver, 4-star league. If we're mapping the lineup, obviously you don't want to do this in a best ball because literally anybody can be in your lineup on a week-to-week basis. But hypothetically, like if you were to map out a lineup on a week-to-week basis, who you would expect to make it, Averich, Matthew Stafford are probably going to be your two guys. Kelsey's going to be in your tight end spot. You're probably going to have all three of your other tight ends working into your flexes.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have Tyreek Hill, Amon St. Brown, Jaden Reed as your main wide receivers. Maybe Michael Pittman works into the equation, or Nick Westbrook-Akine. And then you got Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard with guys like Jalen Warren, Roschon Johnson on the bench. Like you have such a small margin for error if any one of those guys were to disappoint in a week because you don't have any real options that you can count on the bench.
Yeah, no, this is in a start 12 league, man. This is the type of league where I would be just looking to collect as many twos as possible because throwing dart throws on second round rookies, they'll eventually turn into your Jaden Reeds of the world. Like Jaden Reed, you probably spent a second round rookie pick on. You hit on a bunch of second round rookies and you can start to build out a really, really strong, because like my best dynasty best ball team is my Bush League team. And I'm actually pretty sure that Brian is in that league, if I'm not mistaken. He might be.
He is.
In that league. Not only do I have like at running back, I have like Kyron Williams, Devon Achane, Chuba Hubbard, Rashad White, but I also have guys like I picked Tyrone Tracy in the 3rd round. You know what I mean? Like you have dart throws that you're able to just keep cycling into your roster, and those dart throws turn into just like great options for you because they give you 3 to 4 good spike weeks. And I don't see a ton of 3 to 4 good spike week options on this team, especially in a 3 wide receiver, 4 flex league. You're going to need guys that can work into your lineup consistently. So that's the difficult part of this type of roster is that, if this was a start 8 or whatever, I'd be like, okay, your starting lineup is this, you'd be in a really good spot. But it's like the fact that you have a little bit of a top heavy production guys that are a little bit older as well, it makes it worse in a format like this.
Yeah, you just don't really have margin for error. And you say, do I push the chips in with Rice and make a title run? Personally, that'd be a little too ambitious for me. I really do think the best scenario for this team long-term is Rashee Rice going back to that top level of play after the ACL injury. I really do feel like this is probably more of a second half of the 2025 level team for me personally, at least. Add that 108, add another piece that can work into your lineup because realistically, like me and Corey are saying, in a start 12 best ball league, you need players. Like if you look at my last league, dude, I have like 8 startable running backs. I have like 10 startable wide receivers. I have like 2 startable tight ends, a couple startable quarterbacks. Like you need almost an embarrassing amount of depth.
Oh, absolutely. Like I have my wide receiver, like 8 and 9 on my team are like Rashad Bateman and Quentin Johnston, who are giving you like productive weeks.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's basically where you need to be at in a dynasty best ball league for sure.
Yeah. So if you can transition Travis Kelce for a young wide receiver and maybe a young tight end upside piece, like if somebody offered you, let's say for Travis Kelce, you could get an offer on the table. Somebody's willing to give you like one of the rookie receivers from this year's class or something. And, Eric All upside swing and a 3rd round pick. It's like those are the types of moves, like collecting depth, collecting volume of picks, and just cycling out the junk off of your roster. And when you hit on a rookie pick, he's a fixture of your best ball lineups, and then just filter out the crap. That's how you get a really good best ball dynasty team, in my experience, because there is a little bit of different strategy, especially in a start 12 best ball league, when it comes to a regular managed, Joe Schmo start 8 dynasty league. It is a lot different strategy, in my opinion, because you basically have to start hitting on your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round rookie picks that can become, usable spike week production for you.
Yeah, like for example, like the way I constructed, we'll just talk about, you mentioned your Bush League. I'll talk about my last league, like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes at quarterback with guys like, Penix, Carr, Andy Dalton works in every now and then. Like that's how I build a quarterback core. Running backs, again, maybe you don't need both Bijan and Gibbs. It's probably not realistic, but if you have one of those guys plus guys like Najee Harris, Zach Charbonnet, Javonte Williams, Audric Estime, Roschon Johnson, those type of players that can work into your lineup in a pinch. Wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb. You're probably not going to have all of CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, and AJ Brown, but Terry McLaurin, Xavier Legette, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, Quentin Johnson, Adonai Mitchell, Wandale Robinson, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore. You know what I mean? Like you just have
Elijah Moore,
multiple
Rashad
options.
Bateman, and Quentin Johnson types are so important in Dynasty Best Ball. They have way more value in Dynasty Best Ball.
A guy like Taysom Hill.
Yeah, exactly. And like same with your tight, like I could list all 4 of your tight ends. They're Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Will Dissly, and Chika Okonkwo. Like Chika Okonkwo has been objectively terrible this year, and he scored like a 75-yard touchdown like 2 weeks ago.
This past week.
So that's where you're at with some of these players. So for me, I just feel like this team might be a little bit of depth away, especially given the scoring format. So I would probably be willing to pivot and sell off some of your competitive assets. That would be the route that I would take. Again, you're going to know the first through fourth place teams a little bit better than we will at this point in time, but that would be probably the route that I would go. I would look to see what you can get for Tyreek, look to see what you can get for Kamara, look what you can get for Kelsey and Stafford and Russell Wilson, some of these guys that might lose value as soon as the season is over. So let's move into Connor Seed's team here. 12-team full PPR, 6-point per passing touchdown, super flex league. Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones is the main quarterbacks there. B-Rob, Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Wright, he says fodder dog shit at running back. Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., Rashee Rice, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Olave, and other guys there. Of course, you got the new, we're going to have to bring back the term gold standard because Brock Bowers is the platinum standard at this point.
Diamond standard, man.
Yeah, he's the diamond standard. That's the official term. We're going to coin it right now. It looks like he has his 24 picks listed still. I'm assuming he already spent those. He probably spent the mid one on Bowers and the early one on, I don't know, Brian. Maybe the early one was Bowers, the mid one was JSN or something like that, or Brian Thomas. So 2025, he does have an extra first round pick. He said he feels like his team overall is set up to be a contender for years to come, but he does want our opinions. He said he made some trades early on for great value and he feels set up for a bright future, but wants to start competing in 2025. He said, do y'all feel like I can, or should I keep patient and keep the rebuild going? And he said, I've been rocking with you guys since the early Discord days. We know you've been around here, Connor. So really appreciate it. And he said, honest opinions wanted here.
Real quick, do shout out Connor, because when I put the blast in the Discord, first DM I got from Connor is like, wait, you guys are doing a DD? And I'm like, yeah, submit one through. So appreciative. So appreciate you for reaching out too. And glad to cover your team, man. I know you've been waiting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, I can say with absolute confidence and certainty that this is the definition of like a house money team. It is so well constructed at young wide receivers. So you have the best tight end you can possibly have in Dynasty right now. And you have a litany of young quarterbacks with varying levels of risk, which sometimes maybe you want to sell off one of those guys. But with Justin Herbert, he's your anchor. You know he's going to be a stud for years to come. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he's a little up and down, but at least he has the long-term contract that gives you some confidence that he's going to be a long-term guy for you. And then Richardson's your swing. Darnold's your kind of like, oh, I lucked into having this guy. Maybe he turns into something. This is the definition of once you spend these 2025 picks on some hammer running backs, you are going to be a force in this league.
Yeah. And the telltale sign to know, like, oh, am I in a house money situation is when you're looking across a roster and it's like, yeah, strong at quarterback, strong at wide receiver, strong at tight end. And then you go to the running back section, it just says fodder.
Yeah, exactly. We want a lot of fodder on our running back cores when we're trying to get some good draft position.
One thing, for those of you that are wondering, like, okay, like obviously we want to stack our lineups. Like, why are you waiting to add a running back? It's like, well, if we can stack our wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, and tank our own pick because we don't have really good startable options at running back, that is absolutely the last insert into your starting lineup, in my opinion, because as we know, the shelf life of running back value, you want to prioritize these young established wide receivers. A guy like Brock Bowers, for example, I mean, knock on wood, I'm not wishing anything in existence, but if he were to go down and didn't play for the rest of the season, he would still be a top 15 overall dynasty starter pick. Like those type of value insulated assets just don't happen at any other at the running back position. So that's why we say it's the last insertion to your team. Yeah,
exactly. And look how easy it is to get a top 12 dynasty running back. You get a good running back like Tyrone Tracy's like basically like there as like a 5th round rookie. Dude, you get a 2nd round pick running back that ends up hitting all up Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker of years past. Like they're instantly the most valuable running backs in all of Dynasty. Like that's how easy it is to hit on a rookie pick running back. Once, like assuming the guy's a good talent and, you know, goes to a good situation, it's so simple for them to climb the leaderboards of the Dynasty running back rankings.
Well, like outside of a Puka Nakua type at wide receiver, how many day 3 wide receivers? Like, for example, Troy Franklin was like the prize day 3 wide receiver this year. He's been fucking worthless. Whereas you're looking at the day 3 running backs, guys like Tyrone Tracy. I mean, we saw a couple years ago with Chase Brown. Like, there's guys like this every. Brian Robinson was like a late 3rd round pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the way that the NFL is treating the running back position, because not many are getting the 1st round or early 2nd round capital anymore. Well, it's making our jobs easier, because when you're in your rookie 2nd and 3rd round picks, I've been saying, you've been saying, we've been saying for a while, like that is the sweet spot to draft a bunch of young running backs.
What did we do in rookie drafts all last year? We just throw darts, and if you were throwing darts, there's a very good chance
Tracy, Davis.
You got some Tracy, you got some Bucky, you got some Braylon. You got pieces of these guys. Like maybe you got unlucky and you drafted, let's say, a Blake Corum or a Jalen Wright who haven't necessarily hit yet. But like even with those guys, like people were throwing darts on Tank Bigsby 2 years ago and thought they had nothing. And now Tank Bigsby is actually worth something. So that's basically how the running back position works. You just throw running back dart throws in the late 2nd round, mid 3rd round of your rookie drafts. You could probably build out a very good productive running back core with only 3rd and 4th round rookie picks from this year.
Yeah, and he does have a few trades listed here we can go through as well quickly. So he has 24 picks listed, which I don't know why. We'll just pretend like I guess that didn't happen. Or
I'm assuming he already spent those, but he ended up the first trade here. He ended up sending away his not his own 2025 first plus Jordan Mason at peak Jordan Mason time, September 15th, and he ended up getting Brock Bowers. That is nails. Like that, you would have had to pay at least another first, if not 2 more, to get Brock Bowers at this point in time.
Yeah, just slow clap it up, you know. Great move.
Yeah.
Great
move.
Malik Neighbors for Kyler Murray and Chris Olave. Listen, like I'm as big of a Malik Neighbors guy as there is, but this feels like a really solid return.
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, given your team construction, it's hard to get a guy like Malik Neighbors off my roster, if I'm being perfectly honest. When you're a house money team, dude, Malik Neighbors is like just one of those guys that you're like, I want to build around this dude for the next 8 to 10 years. Like that's just the vibe you have around Malik Neighbors. But when you're getting a super flex quarterback that can give you 20 plus points per game, and you're getting a 24-year-old wide receiver who's a true number 1, that's a good return.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's equate it out. So he actually takes the Kyler Murray, Chris Olave piece. So he keeps Chris Olave, deals Kyler Murray, David Montgomery, and Jalen Waddle for what looks to be the 104 this upcoming year, Anthony Richardson and Brian Thomas Jr. So the way we kind of slice it out is both of these guys are 2nd round startup picks. So I kind of equate Brian Thomas Jr. and Kyler Murray. Then at that point, it's David Montgomery and Jalen Waddle for Richardson and first. This is the perfect transition. Like Montgomery and Waddle at this point, we know what their value ceilings are. Anthony Richardson, we don't know what it is at this point. That 104, clear already best overall piece in that deal. So, other than Kyler Murray and Brian Thomas, of course.
Yeah.
So the way we're equating this out is you're getting a 1st round of insulation and also taking the highest upside piece in the deal. There's a real possibility we're looking back in a year and you've crushed the steal. And even if Anthony Richardson didn't work out, let's just say Anthony Richardson ends up being the quarterback 18 on keep trade cut in a year. That 104 is going to be extremely valuable. Like what? Yeah. Even if this was 104 and Brian Thomas for Kyler, David Montgomery, and Jalen Waddle, I think that's more than fine.
Yeah, no, you can definitely multiple outs to winning a trade, especially like how hard you could win this trade as far as like the 3 assets you acquired could all end up being 1st round startup picks someday kind of thing. That definitely makes a lot of sense to me. So, I mean, there's not much else I would need to say about this team. I think you're in a really good spot. You've obviously been a devoted listener for a long time, so I kind of trust what you've been doing at this point. So let's move into Aaron J's team here. You guys can see 12-team PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown, single quarterback. So Kyler's pretty much all you need there. Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, what else can you say there? Those guys are 1st round startup picks in a 1 quarterback league. Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake London, Jalen Waddle, Malik Neighbors. This team's absolutely loaded, as you guys can see. 2025 also somehow has banked up 2 early firsts on top of this team. So I would love to give you a ton of devoted energy here, Aaron, but this team is loaded.
Hear me out. That may have been the best case scenario for your team. Sure. Do you lose 1 year of contending value? Yeah. But look how young your core is. And now you're adding the 102 and the 103 to it.
Yeah. He's like, he says in his comments here, he's like, I'm kind of pissed because somehow with this team, I'm 4-8. Because he's made bad start-sit decisions and so on and so forth. But
blessing in disguise.
This is a blessing in disguise, dude. This is like, I'm trying to think of an example of like a real-life NFL team that like lucked into a bad season and then ended up getting like a great I think it was like the 49ers. The 49ers, when they got Nick Bosa, is a good example of this. They had a good team. had a bunch of injuries, got Nick Bosa, second overall pick, and then they were ready for a Super Bowl window the next year.
Yeah, well, the comparable too, I can just say from my own team, is like in 2020 when Dak got hurt, your team tanked, and you ended up with Micah Parsons. If Dak doesn't get hurt, you don't end up with Micah Parsons.
Yeah, no, exactly. So this is a team that is going to be an absolute horse for a long time. Like come next year, how high are we going to be taking Marvin in redraft leagues? How high are we going to be taking Drake London in redraft leagues? Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyler Murray, Jalen Waddle, all like Malik Neighbors, all these dudes. Like Trey McBride's going to be a top 3 tight end in redraft leagues. Yeah. Like you are going to be a loaded contender, potentially adding Tet McMillan, Luther Bird, Nash and Genty, whoever you end up getting 102, 103. You are in an absolutely enviable position. So don't worry about the fact that you got screwed this year as far as your record is concerned. Selling Michael Pittman before the season for Zay Flowers and Jalen Polk. I mean, Jalen Polk was a bust and you ended up, or at least has been a bust so far, and you ended up smashing this deal out of the park. So great move there. Chase Brown on October 19th, you traded him away from your competitive or from your like rebuilding team, plus a mid-second for Deebo Samuel. Again, that hasn't really worked out for you, but you ended up selling Deebo Samuel for Malik Neighbors in the next trade. You got Deebo Samuel, Calvin Ridley, Jordan Addison. You sold that off for Malik Neighbors. So I feel better about the 2 deals combined.
Yeah, I was about to say, yo, like that Chase Brown and the 2 for Deebo. Like I might take the Chase Brown and the 2 over Deebo at this point. Maybe
I wouldn't take a 2 over Deebo.
No. But like, you know what I mean, though, in terms of like the value. It's like, but then when you combine it with the next deal, it's like, even if you substitute Deebo's name in for Chase Brown, a second, Calvin Ridley, like, yeah, that doesn't equate to Neighbors. You know, you got a good price there.
No, absolutely. Yeah. If you Chase Brown mid-second, Calvin Ridley, Jordan Addison was what you paid for Malik Neighbors. And I would pay that all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. So again, Aaron, I would love to give you so much airtime and talk about how great your team is, but the reality is you have probably 8 to 10 players that will be top 4-round redraft picks next year who are all under the age of like 25. So you are in a position where you are going to be a horse for the next 3 to 4 years, and just look at this year as an absolute blessing that you're going to add 2 top 3 picks to it. And hell, you don't even have to spend those on rookies.
Consolidate, dude.
You could consolidate to send that 102 and 103 for a superstar wide receiver, a superstar, whatever. You could go out and do whatever you want with this team.
Yeah, for real. I mean, I'm looking at it. I was thinking, I'm like, maybe you move up to 101, get Genty, and it's like, oh, you also still have Breece and Gibbs. Like, this is absurd.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
so
do you see, like, if the guy, like, again, wishful thinking, but if the guy at 101 had like something in like a really strong wide receiver, like
definitely. If you want to go get Genty from the guy, definitely go do it. Like, I think this is the type of team format where you just kind of almost throw value out the window to some degree. And you're just like, I want Genty. He's going to be a horse for me. I'm just going to go get him. That's fine. Like if it costs you the 102 and the 103 for Genty and Ladd McConkey or something like that, then you can probably stomach that. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally a fair thing. And he might want to do that because he's like, you know what? I'm not ready to compete yet. I could use those 2 picks, blah, blah, blah. That definitely would make some sense to me. So let's move into the final team of the video, which is from Jaceplant here. You guys can see
he's in our Flocked Up League, I believe.
He is in our Flocked Up League. So he's got a 10-team PPR here, single quarterback, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jared Goff, definitely more than enough there. Kenneth Walker is his main running back with a bunch of handcuffs and young running backs, Benson and Corum specifically. Malik Neighbors, I feel like, has been on literally every team we've broken down so far. Drake London, Rashee Rice, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, so on and so forth. So you got a couple injured wide receivers there, but still in a very good spot. Dalton Kincaid, Ben Sinnott, Cade Stover, and some other guys at tight end. And then you have 4 1s in 2025, 2 2s, 2 3s, and then all of your future picks. So he basically said that he submitted a team way back in May. We broke it down, wasn't really in the greatest shape. And he ended up wheeling and dealing and turning this thing into just absolute money.
House money, baby. I mean, we're looking at the running back core. You got Walker producing right now. After that, I mean, like, we love Benson's upside, especially after this year. If they move on from Connor impending free agent, Benson's looked efficient all year. He's a 2025 play, which is perfect considering you have 4 2025 picks that you're also adding to this team. So him not producing this year is actually in the benefit of you. And that's why we always say, from a house money perspective, if you can get young appreciating assets that maybe aren't producing at their highest end that you know that they're capable of, well, that's inherently increasing the value of your own pick. And then we're looking at the rest of the team. I mean, Caleb, Drake. I mean, it's a 1 quarterback league. You're kind of just flexing on your league mates at that point. Neighbors, London, Rashee Rice, Ayuk, Waddle, etc. there. Tight ends, a little bit more concerning, I would say, because Kincaid hasn't lived up to the expectation. And Ben Sinnott, I still think the talent's there, but obviously Zach Ertz has been starting all year for Washington. Still think you got some upside there, but I wouldn't be opposed to maybe adding a guy because like we're going to look at it on the right side there. I mean, 4 first-round picks, 2 seconds, 2/3. This is a great tight end class. I wouldn't even be opposed to spending one of those 2s on one of them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, you're going to grab a couple horses at running back, presumably. This is, I mean, he said he's going to probably end up with the 103, 104, not like the 101, 102, which he lists here as early first. This is the type of team that you can absolutely go trade up for Genty. If it costs you 103 and 109, let's say one of those projected late firsts are, go get Genty with this team. And this is an absolute squad in the making. So he said, any advice on who I should target or just stay steady with what I have? Look for opportunities to buy stud running backs after this season is over. Look for opportunities maybe to go out and get Brock Bowers with this type of roster. Like, your receiver core is so loaded to the point that you don't really have to do anything at that position. I think between the quarterbacks that you have, you should be totally fine there. If you wanted to go get a horse quarterback, you want to go get Josh Allen or Jaden Daniels or Jalen Hurts or somebody like that, you could definitely go and do it. You have the purchasing power of your draft picks are going to go a long way in your league, in my opinion, especially once people start to realize how good the class is and, you know, the players that are at the top of the board. So, I mean, we can quickly go over his trades. He sent away Chris Olave and a 3rd-round pick for Caleb Williams, Brandon Ayuk. Again, in a super flex league, this would be a steal, but it is one quarterback. I still really like that move for you. Ayuk and Olave are pretty comparable for me long-term, and Caleb Williams for a 3rd and a 1-quarterback league even is still an absolute steal. That was before the season that he did that. Jordan Mason, Rico Dowd on a late 2nd for a mid-1st. You sell off those, you know, competitive assets. You get a mid-1st out of it. Great move there. And then Zay Flowers.
One thing on that, this is the type of deal that we talk about all the time. When you're in a situation where you know you're not going to compete in that year, can you take 2 running back producers, make your team inherently worse at the position to tank your own pick, and then use it to upgrade a pick? Maybe it won't be a situation where in every deal you're going to be able to move a late projected for a 2nd for a mid projected 1st. But even if it's like, hey, I have my 3rd, can I do a 3-for-2 swap and give you like an older productive asset that'll help you? Because it's also inherently helping you because you're getting that off your team.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because sometimes it's so easy for us to just say, sell this player for any 2nd, sell this player for any 1st. But sometimes people are like, I don't want to pay a 1st straight up for Jordan Mason right now, for example. It's like, but what if I threw in Rico Dowdle, who's also productive right now? Like, that's how you move the needle to a contender. Because as a contender in many dynasty leagues, I would rather have multiple assets come back my way if I'm giving away my 1st or giving away my 2nd-round pick or whatever, which is why it makes sense for both sides. It's like a win-win deal. You're tanking your own pick. You're getting that running back production off of your team, and the competitive team got a couple weeks of Jordan Mason and now Rico Dowdle starting to produce, and they got a late 2nd-rounder. So it's a trade.
If they win the championship, they're fine with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a trade that makes sense for both sides. The last deal you made a couple weeks back, Zay Flowers, Jaden Reed for Kenneth Walker, Jalen Waddle. I think this one is probably more so on the fringe of maybe you were looking to buy low on Jalen Waddle. I get it, but I think in your situation, I would have held Flowers and Reed.
And that's where I'm at. Again, in a different situation, if you didn't have all those first, if you didn't have a house money situation and you needed a productive running back, I would at least understand it, because if you needed a running back producer, Walker profiles top 12 rest of the season. Jalen Waddle, again, he's on the low right now, but you can make the argument that when he's on his high, he is comparable to like a Jaden Reed type of asset in terms of, you know, speed, spike weeks, good insulated offense. Like, they're not all that dissimilar as assets. It's just Jaden Reed has been so much more, I don't even want to call it consistent because he hasn't even been consistent, but it's been more consistent than Waddle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, at least the value of Jaden Reed has been more consistent.
I would take Jaden Reed for sure. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, like Reed is younger. He's been more productive than Waddle. He's tethered to a quarterback that we believe in slightly more with Jordan Love. Like, it's a better asset in my opinion. And Flowers too. I mean, he's a top like 16 dynasty.
Better than Walker.
And given your situation, if you had neighbors, London, Rashee Rice, Brandon Ayuk, Jaden Reed, and Zay Flowers, you just draft like basically only running backs in 2025, and you're going to be in a really good spot.
And one last thing, again, like, not to harp on the deal. It's not like we think you got robbed or anything. Like, I can see the case for both sides. Again, we would prefer the left side, but also, like, if you needed a running back to produce, I don't mind the right side. It's more so just the timing of this deal that I have a problem with, because like we're kind of saying, like, you don't want running back producers right now. So why would you pay 1.2x, let's just say, the market cost to be able to add one? Like, that's what we're pointing out. Again, not criticizing, because your team is still really good. You've still turned it around a crazy amount. I mean, you sent the before and after forms for this, and the before, I mean, won't spend long on it, but let's just go quickly. Like he only had like Kendre Miller, Zeke Elliott at running back, Jared Goff, Will Levis at quarterback. He had all picks and he was able to turn it around. So I want to give you your flowers there, but also wish we can get that flowers back.
Well, what did I say earlier in the video? You win 70% of your deals, you're going to be in a good spot. So even if you lost this deal, you're probably still 100%. In a good spot anyways. So that is going to wrap up the video from us. Again, thank you guys for submitting your teams. Again, if you do want to be a part of these videos going forward, we are going to ramp up the Dynasty Decisions going in. Now we're kind of gearing a little bit out of the redraft season, more so into Dynasty season. We're going to be talking about prospects very, very soon. So if you guys want all the Dynasty content you can handle from us, from the other creators, head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up for 7 days for free, 30% off any of the packages, 6 months for free when you sign up annually. You can get a team review. So basically exactly what we just did for these people. You can get a personalized team review into your, Flock Fantasy account there. We'll, look over your team using our My Teams feature. You can load in your team, see how good your team stacks up relative to the rest of your league. And we can give you personalized advice. Hey, we would go after this player from this team. You should rebuild, you should contend, so on and so forth. So if that interests you, check it out down below in the pinned comment, flockfantasy.com. And you can get, access to skip the line in all of these videos by being a site subscriber using the promo code FSE. So with that being said, peace out and we'll talk to you soon.